And so you are actually actively fighting psychology when you are choosing not to buy, because there's a release of dopamine. We all know this. There's a release of dopamine when you buy that new pair of heels. And so we are just trying to solve the first issue, which is the asymmetry of information, which is sites can actively hide if there's a better deal that exists for consumers. Okay, let's solve that. Okay, great. We can start there. We're a free tool to use. But I love this idea of only buying when it's something that you're actually going to keep over time. And hey, let us be there to show you, yeah, you shouldn't buy this when you shouldn't.
I'm Sammi Cohen, and this is Social Currency, a podcast that unpacks the stories that are shaping business, culture, and the intersection of the two. You know how Google Flights can show you the best prices for the trip you want to take? Well, co-founders Phoebe Gates and Sophia Kianni are making the Google Flights for fashion with their startup Phia. Phia is a browser extension and mobile app designed to make fashion smarter, more sustainable, and affordable. The app tracks pricing data across thousands of online retailers, surfaces lower cost alternatives, and highlights secondhand options. In addition to launching Phia this year, Phoebe and Sophia also launched the Burnouts, their business podcast on the Unwell network, run by Call Her Daddy's Alex Cooper. Phoebe and Sophia are influenced by extremely unique and singular backgrounds. Phoebe is the daughter of Bill Gates and Melinda French Gates, and Sophia is the youngest United Nations advisor in U.S. history. I asked them both about how these influences have impacted their approach to building Phia. We also talk about their experiences dropping out of college together to start Phia, the rollout of their company, and how to build a podcast as part of a more general business strategy. This is Phoebe Gates and Sophia Kianni, Social Currency. Phoebe Gates, Sophia Kianni, welcome to Social Currency.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here.
You two initially met as roommates at Stanford and were very good friends before founding Phia. Were there any potential ideas for companies that you almost started together before you landed on Phia?
Oh my goodness, so many. So we talked about in our first episode, just the massive bad ideas we had. I mean, we thought we'd do literally like a Bluetooth tampon that could tell you if you had STDs or not, or what your health was. So you wouldn't have to go in to take a blood test. We tried to do electric cruise ships was something we looked into.
We did look into
We
that.
looked into a sustainable subscription box. We had so many different ideas that were so bad. But it kind of became this game where it was, because we were roommates as well, we'd spend an entire week like digging into this idea, being like, what does Ipsy's model look like? What does FabFitFun's model look like? What is the total addressable market we could hit? And then it'd be like, okay, well, if this was to succeed, what would we create or build? And we'd kind of walk it backwards and be like, well, okay, could we spend 10 years working on this problem? And then we were like, wait, are we the right people to solve the problem? And so it became kind of this game where every week we'd have a different idea and we'd do this deep dive investigation. But it was only really when we came up with the idea for Phia that we were like, oh, wait, this is actually kind of interesting. There is something here where we could do it.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that is we did approach it through a lens that I do think was smart, in the sense that we would look at what are old, archaic industries and what are specific things that haven't been innovated on in a while. Sometimes I'm like, we should go back and look at our Google Drive, because some of our ideas were not that horrible. It was really interesting. I was driving down the New Jersey highway the other week, and I was looking at all these shipping containers. And one of our ideas that we had that I still don't think is that bad of an idea is, right now, shipping containers are gigantic and metal, and then they're super inefficient because they don't get filled up all the way. And so we were thinking of creating something that could be lighter and collapsible so that you could stack them on top of each other, but also it could be more space efficient if you didn't end up filling the whole thing. So anyway, it was such a blast from the past because I was passing it on the highway and I was like, man, what if we had gone with that idea? What would our life be like right now? But I think that the key thing that was missing is not that those were bad ideas. I think actually someone is building a version of what I was just talking about, but that we weren't that passionate about it. Like, I could not spend the rest of my life for the next 10 years working on shipping containers. I unfortunately think that's extremely boring. But for fashion and shopping, this is an old archaic industry that hasn't been innovated on, and we find it very intellectually stimulating and fun. And so I think that's why we decided that we wanted to focus on this industry specifically, and then started, but again, with the same exercise of what are the actual pain points and areas that haven't changed, and where can we have an innovative solution?
Do you remember the specific conversation that you two had when you kind of looked at each other and you're like, this is it? Was there a moment like that?
I don't think we believed it. I remember sitting on our couch in our dorm room and talking about what would it be like to build a tool that could instantly find you a deal cheaper on sale or even secondhand. but it was never like, oh, wow, this is the idea we should go with. We thought in the beginning it was too small. And we had a lot of people tell us it was way too small of an idea. But that's the only criticism people could come up with. And then for all the other ideas, the criticisms were very clear. We weren't the right people to build them. And so for this, we were like, well, at a certain point, we were like, well, even if it's going to be too small, why don't we just try it and build like a prototype of it? I don't think it was until that we actually had the prototype and we gave it to like 500 users and we started seeing like transactions come through that we were like, oh, wow, like there actually is something here.
I was like, this is our idea. Because I really thought this was something I personally would use. And I genuinely felt, because I think a lot of these other ideas that we had, I knew objectively that they were a pain point, but it wasn't a pain point that I personally was dealing with. With this, it was very much me frustrated thinking, man, shopping is so annoying. Shopping secondhand is such a better option. Why does it take me 2 hours to find one item and then match it against every single secondhand shopping site? There must be a better way. And so when we were ideating and thinking what this could look like and then landing on the final concept of the browser plugin, I was like, I don't know if we can build it. That was my main thing. I thought if we can build this, I think this is a phenomenal idea because this is genuinely something I would use every single day. My main worry was I have no idea if this is even technically possible. I don't even know if it will work properly. And so once we had the early prototype, which I would say essentially was we were looking at a black bag and it would find a blue bag, it was close enough where I felt like this stuff is working and there is a pathway to us actually building something meaningful. And that was what really excited me.
Stop. Do you remember the cane?
Which cane?
Our first MVP, we were looking at like the stawed beaded bag that we both wanted. And our algorithm pulled a cane from eBay. Do you remember that?
So
it pulled like a wooden cane.
There was
like, we were like,
perfect.
we're so screwed.
I'm like, there was way worse examples than that. I think I must leave it at that one because there was other examples where it worked even worse. But it was doing things. The wheels were spinning. So
they were spinning in the wrong direction though. They were spinning
Probably,
sideways.
yeah.
So you both dropped out of Stanford to pursue Phia. Walk me through that decision. Who brought it up first, and how did you convince each other that this was the right move?
Okay, well, it's a little complex because we say dropped out because it's kind of like hot and markety, right? But the truth is that Sophia took a gap year and then Stanford is so flexible that they want you to be kind of like part-time. So Stanford actually has a program in New York. So we both did night school. I honestly think the conversation was us being like, we have to do this. We have to believe in this and we have to go. And then it was really a matter of we both knew that our degrees were important to us. We both knew we were going to get our degrees. And then it was just a matter of like, how can we finesse this so we can get both done and frankly get the degrees done as fast as possible to keep building.
When things started working for our business, so we took an entrepreneurship class at Stanford, and I remember that we pitched these venture capitalists our idea, and one of the people who was an early, he led the Honey acquisition.
Yeah.
So we pitched them, and then he said, wow, this is a really good idea. It's like a more sustainable, fashionable version of what we bought. If this is successful, we'll buy you, something like that. And at the moment, it just felt so consequential because it really felt like this objective external validation that we were actually iterating on something that had potential.
Phoebe, you've spoken publicly about an insecurity that you had when you were in college around how your dad's success may impact the way that people perceive you. And how do you navigate that now when you're building this credibility in the tech space and you're still acknowledging the advantages of your family name?
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of just like recognizing the privilege that you have. I wouldn't say as much it was an insecurity. It was more just like finding myself and finding my own identity of, okay, who is Phoebe separate from my family? And then I'd say navigating the tech space, it's actually quite, it's just really something about, okay, accepting the amount of privilege I have and then thinking about how can I now use that to propel other things forward? Okay, can I, get advice from my dad on how to best hire people? Where can I apply that advice in my own daily life? How can I look at things that he's done that I'm like, okay, wow, that worked really well, or, oh, that didn't work when he was in his 20s, and lean on my parents. I think that's been really important for me.
The whole asking about building the team part, one thing that I think Phia does really well, and you do this in your podcast, you do this very publicly, is you shout out the strengths of your team. And you talk about what it's like to build a team and how to look for talent and how to foster and grow your team. So Any advice that Bill's given on building a team that you've actually kept at Phia?
Yeah, it's funny because so at first Microsoft was in Albuquerque before they're, super successful, and then they moved to Seattle. So the team transitions a lot in between that period of time. There's about 10 people when they're in Albuquerque, and then they move to Seattle, and that's when they're first hiring for operations, they're hiring for marketing. And one thing that he really taught me is originally when he came up to Seattle, they hired a lot of people who were a lot older than him on the operations or marketing end. And then they realized, wait a minute, these people don't really know what they're doing. And it wasn't until really he got Steve Ballmer and Paul Allen involved that they really had this like core team. The big learning is focusing on people who don't necessarily have the experience, but have that edge. Does that person, have an intuition for marketing where they're going to be able to get it done? Are they going to be able to spot new trends or places where, okay, you can do ad spend that's going to have, a higher conversion to downloads because it's the platform that people aren't investing in. So I think focusing on like young, hungry talent was a really, really big learning from him. Not to say that there aren't older experienced people who, by the way, you need when you scale a business who are core to your business. But that focusing on that can be really core to a team, is also finding young, hungry talent. And sometimes the experience on the resume isn't everything.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about that, because that's one thing I've noticed when I'm seeing the TikToks and the Instagrams of Phia. I'm like, these people are all so young, and it's amazing. And I think there's a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's something around hiring for the willingness to learn as opposed to just the blank experience. So, Sophia, you are the youngest UN advisor in U.S. history, and you founded Climate Cardinals, which is the world's largest youth-led climate nonprofit. How has your background helped to prepare you for this entrepreneurship journey that you're on?
The biggest learning I had when starting my nonprofit was that it's not about having a really good idea. It's about having people who actually have the motivation and the willingness to want to execute it that sets people apart in the world. Because I don't think that what I thought of was particularly novel. I really thought, okay, if we want more people to be talking about climate change, we should translate climate information into more languages, and we should leverage digital media to get more people to have this conversation. But most people didn't want to do that work. People didn't want to spend that time and that energy to find the translators, to connect the translators to the climate nonprofits. And so that honestly was a huge learning for me, in the sense of now when we're running Phia, you just need to find people who are hungry enough and excited enough about the problem to actually want to sit down and dedicate time to it. And that oftentimes has nothing to do with how much money you're making or anything like that, but genuinely being inspired and motivated by a mission. That was something that always was really incredible to me when building Climate Cardinals. Is it was just me and my friends from high school. And we spent all of college working and building this nonprofit completely in our free time. And we were able to service the United Nations, the Yale Center for Climate Communications, these huge organizations, purely because of our willpower and because we believed in the mission. We were all doing this work because we actually thought we were making a positive impact. Now, when we have hired people for Phia, it's always about how much do you care and how much work are you willing to put in to actually move the needle. And that can look different for everyone, but I think focusing on one very specific thing and becoming an expert in that, because everyone started knowing absolutely nothing. Yep. We knew absolutely nothing 2 years ago. We still know absolutely nothing about a lot of different things, but there are a few very specific things that I'm like, whoa, I know more about mobile extension onboarding than 99.99% of the population, and has really served me well in this business. And I learned that from nothing. And so I think knowing that, it's like, as long as you have someone who's willing to work, they can go from 0 to 100. They just need to be willing to put in that time and energy and care enough to do it. And so everyone on our team has that specific skill set of wanting to go 0 to 100 on a very niche area of the business that they fundamentally care about. And I am so grateful for our team.
Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned with getting employees or people to join the company who are focused on the Phia mission, I actually think not enough people talk about this, about almost an X factor that you have as a business if you're not just a vertical SaaS business who's creating efficiencies, right? And there's no mission involved. When you are a mission-focused company, it really is an X factor, because you can attract talent that, of course, is going to get the paycheck, but they're also helping to, as cheesy as it sounds, make the world a better place. And I want to get into Phia because there's a lot to discuss. So you mentioned that Phia first rolled out as a browser extension, But then your team created the Phia app also ahead of the launch. So what was the mentality around launching the browser extension first?
Yeah, so browser extensions are really interesting, and it's kind of a nascent space because Safari only launched the browser extension in 2022?
Yeah, it was like maybe 4 years ago.
So we're one of
something
the
like that.
top 10 browser extensions on mobile Safari.
What?
And there's literally about 100 that exist. And the interesting thing with a browser extension is we really fundamentally didn't want it to be that Phia disrupted your shopping journey or added another step where, okay, you got to open the Phia app to check and make sure you're getting the right price. We wanted to create something because the long-term vision for Phia, right, is this idea of the two of our names fused together. What if there was this magical, stylish girl who could just give us advice on everything and be our personal shopper? That's what we wanted to create. That was the vision. Well, you can't have to go to her and go to the app to start doing stuff. She should just tag along as you're shopping because that's what a real assistant would do. And we felt that the browser extension was the closest way to do that. And also there's this, crazy thing when you start an app, the biggest thing that app developers face is that retention is a huge issue. Everyone installs an app. I don't know about you guys. I have about 1 million apps on my phone that I completely forget about. And then they just don't ever come back. The idea of being in the browsers, you're always there to be helpful when the person's actually shopping or on like that landing page. And then the app is really about, expressing the long-term vision of Phia, which is, okay, right now we help as you're considering which item to buy to make sure you're getting the best price, to make sure, it's not on sale somewhere else. But we also want the app to be that discovery funnel. So that's why we do like the personalized collections for users. And that's really the taste of like where Phia is going in the long term.
It's also a technical limitation, to be
Yeah.
honest. You cannot download a mobile browser extension without downloading an app. So the big pivot for us was realizing that 80% of consumers are now shopping on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
And we had built a desktop browser extension, and universally the feedback we got was, this is so awesome. I never shop on my computer. I only shop on my phone, and I only do my work on my computer, which we should have realized because we're very similar. And so we pivoted because we wanted to meet our customer where she was shopping, which was on her phone. And so we wanted to build the mobile browser extension because the real beauty of Phia was in the ease of the experience of, I don't need to remember to use another app. I have so many apps cluttering my phone. I don't need another app. I need a little assistant that can help me while I'm shopping. And so we wanted to understand, how do we build a mobile browser extension? And the only way you can download a mobile browser extension is you download the app and then you go through the onboarding process and toggle on the extension. But that is honestly just a weird way that I don't know why Apple does it. Honestly, I have a bone to pick with Apple. The way people turn on Safari extensions is so difficult. It's so annoying. And it was hard because we needed to focus on two problems at the same time, which was building this browser extension, which is our main value prop, and then also simultaneously making sure the app is not just a bare nothingness so that people don't delete it. Because if you delete the app, which people didn't realize, if you delete the app, you delete our mobile browser extension.
Oh, no.
Yes. And so that was a huge thing for us where we were like, okay, we can't have this just be a little launching pad that takes you to the browser extension and then just leave it there, because then people were like, oh, great, I got the browser extension, let me delete the app. And then we were like, no, you got rid of us.
Apple needs to simplify some things.
They need to
100%.
simplify some things. They need to make it as easy to download a browser extension as it is on Chrome, which is just one click. You add it to your browser and then it's there. For some reason, you download the app. You have to toggle on 3 different permissions. It's a mess.
Sophia, you mentioned a user who actually found their wedding dress on Phia, which is so cool. I love that for you guys. And these high stakes, once in a lifetime purchases really demonstrate the ultimate trust test for a platform like you guys have built. And so what does it take for someone to really trust Phia with their most important fashion decisions?
For us, it's really about trying to give the customer as much information as possible. And so we now have partnerships with hundreds of secondhand sites. We have a database of over 250 million items. And so when someone lands on a product page, our goal is, how can we take all of that information from the title, from the image, the brand, the price, and then match it against our database to bring up the most relevant results. And so for us, it's really about information is key, just giving people as much information and insight as possible. And that's how we want to ultimately build more trust and customer loyalty. And so we also will show if an item is authenticated, for example. So if I don't remember, but if you're buying like a $3,000 wedding dress, you should probably buy it from one of those platforms that over $500, which is like eBay, Poshmark. They do authentication, so it'll guarantee that it's from a legitimate designer, whereas some platforms don't. And so if a platform doesn't, we just simply do not put the verified check mark because it might not be real. And that's a risk that you're willing to take. But that's really the thing, is giving the customer as much information as possible. And then we trust them to make their own informed decision. Let me tell you, I have rolled the dice many times. I have bought things on Depop that were very, very cheap. Do I know if they're real or not? I do not. I still feel good about my purchase, and I hope no one shames me for it. But that was like a decision that I consciously made as a customer, and I knew that I was running a risk, and I knew that it was not authenticated, and that was okay with me. And so we applied the same logic of, if you want to buy something, here's all the information we can give to you about it. You make your own decision.
I think it's really about transparency is the number one thing. I think about showcasing to the user, if we can't find the exact match, if we can find similar matches, being honest about what's authenticated versus not. We just want to be like your research assistant buddy and serve you the same things you would get if you went on, a 30-minute deep dive to learn, okay, where else can I find this authenticated? Where is the best return policy? We're just your assistant to deliver that. So I think it's all about transparency too. And that's why even for like our error messages, if our loading takes too long, we'll tell users. Like, we're just very honest and upfront. And I think that's the biggest thing as well, is like being honest, especially when we were in betas and we knew our search results weren't the best. But getting users to be like, we'd send an email before and be like, hey, this is where our search is working. It works well, when we first started on bags and shoes, and it doesn't work well in clothing. Give us your feedback. Do you ever find a good search result? What do the bad ones look like? Why are they bad? And so constantly like iterating and getting feedback on that. So now we have a good search algorithm, which, by the way, we're still working on, has been, I think, really, really important for us as well.
You've talked actually about two different types of transparency. There's like the UI transparency and the check mark, but there's also transparency in how you run the business and what you share with the customers about how your product is evolving, which is cool. And I think you kind of need both, especially as a company that's learning, growing very quickly. It also lets your customers kind of feel like they're part of the ride. I'm sure we're going to talk about customer feedback and all of that, but I think that's so crucial in today's day and age when people are building companies. You have to be an open book.
And that's the other thing, is this consumer is starved for innovation, right? Like, if you think about shopping, it really hasn't developed that much. We have these great luxury e-commerce sites. We have Amazon, where I can get my toilet paper in 2 minutes. But in terms of like, developments for, the consumer who's shopping 24/7, you see a handful of like closet or wish list apps, but there's nothing that's truly trying to transform the way that we shop. And so it's very table stakes to start with something. Why doesn't it exist? Why isn't there a tool that can just show me, boom, instantly the resale value of an item? And does it exist cheaper somewhere else or on the secondhand market? And let me have all my wish lists and have curated collections. Like, that should exist already. And so we're getting feedback constantly, but users are also informing us of, hey, this is the next feature I want. This is actually what I want to see. And so that's really important. And I think there's been a lot of assumptions we had about what we thought, oh, this should be the best, next step in our product roadmap. And consumers will tell us, if you show them design mocks of different things, they'll be like, no, I don't care about that. I don't give a damn about that. But no, this would actually be really useful to me.
You also call Phia the Google Flights for fashion, which I love. Every great tech company needs a one-liner like that. And for Google Flights, the value is really in the comparison. It's on speed, price, convenience. So in your opinion, what are the equivalents of those value levers when it comes to fashion discovery?
To hit on the tagline, we just talked about this on the Phia Instagram, but for us, we are building a product that is a little hard to understand from the lens of, it's a mobile browser extension. We're doing this comparison between retail and secondhand. And so it was really this goal of, how do we extremely simply, in one line, describe our value prop? And what we landed on after some customer testing was that people understood the best Google Flights for fashion because everyone has used Google Flights before. And the real utility is being able to compare on things like price, where I want to understand what is the cheapest option. And so in our filtering, that's what we allow people to do, is to understand, how do I look at the difference between the secondhand and the new?
Yeah, it's fascinating just thinking of, and I'm sure you guys have so much research on this through all of your customer interviews, but shopping has always been something that is emotional and aspirational. And it kind of comes from this place that's a little bit harder to quantify. And so I think that Phia adding this quantifiable layer to it is ultimately going to benefit the customer. But I think there's obviously shifts that need to happen in the industry as people start to almost think of their shopping behavior in that way.
I think even like there's very basic things like how many times have you ordered something and then it fits incorrectly or it's a little bit loose like somewhere or it doesn't quite look right on you. Like there's very basic things we can do to make that experience easier so you don't have to zoom in and look on that price graph and then, okay, go get out the tape measure and figure it out what you are. Like there's ways we can inform you of like, yeah, this will fit you, or we can see from reviews this runs a little bit large, this isn't going to fit you well. So there's a lot of other things we can do to honestly reduce returns too, such that when you are making a purchase that is aspirational or that is emotional, it's an item that you know you're going to look good in, you know you're getting the best deal, and you know you're buying something of good quality.
Mm-hmm. So I saw a statistic that despite 93% of US shoppers who are open to buying secondhand, only around 50% of them have actually purchased a secondhand apparel item in the last year. So what specific barriers are you identifying that explain this gap between intention and action?
Well, really, most people are still shopping the same way, which is they go to a traditional retail site and then they go and they find an item that they like, or they're on Instagram. They see an influencer has linked an item, they go to that item, and there's so much impulse buying that happens, and the easiest products to discover are new products. And so secondhand traditionally has taken a lot of sifting and time. And if you want a specific item, you need to go and scroll for a long time on Poshmark or Depop to go and find that specific item. And then you need to look through all the information and see, is it worth it? What's the difference? And so it's a very cumbersome experience. And that is what we realized is when you ask people, like you said, do you want to shop secondhand? People say yes. But when you ask them and break down what are the reasons you're not, a lot of times it comes down to this lack of convenience and just this overall overwhelming and annoying experience. And so our goal was, how do we disrupt this by inserting ourselves in the existing customer journey, which is I'm already shopping and I am about to impulse buy something. And instead you click the little, should I buy this button? And then it gives you a quick price check of actually, girl, no, you should not buy it because it's way cheaper. It's $100 less on the real. It's better for the planet. It's a win-win. And also, I think it was really interesting. We were talking to some girls about their hesitancies around buying secondhand. Like, okay, I can't return this item. Is this going to fit right? There's obviously some hesitation around that. But then when you ask them, like, would you buy an item on final sale? They say yes, because the price is so low that it's worth the risk. And so that's where we really tried to focus on the number one thing that people care about is price.
Yep.
And so if you hone in on that pain point and make them understand, you can literally save up to 75% off with buying the secondhand version of the item you were already going to buy, then it's worth it to them to take a little bit of a risk and say, okay, well, if I can save $200, $300, I will consider buying secondhand. And hopefully, really what I've noticed, at least anecdotally, is once someone has one positive experience with buying a secondhand item, realizing that it fits, that there was no quality issues at all, they're much more likely to become repeat secondhand shoppers. I mean, I remember when I bought my first secondhand item, my mom thought I had lost my mind because she did not understand this concept of buying used clothing. And she just thought it was weird. She thought it was gross. And then I bought it. Looked amazing. It looked so good. And it was so cheap. And she kind of started to turn a little bit and was like, can you show me how to use this? I'm really curious. How do I use the real? I want to get some nice designer heels for a low price. And so I think it's really about a mindset shift of making people understand it might seem too good to be true, but it's not. You genuinely can find such quality, amazing items in perfect condition, secondhand. It's way cheaper. It's more sustainable. It's just a win-win. You just need to help people to understand that.
And your core demographic, they love sustainability, but they also are very active on social media. And we know that fast fashion rules social media. I feel like every time I open my For You page, I'm getting a haul from someone who bought something from who knows where.
Shein,
yeah. How do you position Phia to capture both the desire for environmentalism and consciousness around sustainability and that consumer's desire for constant newness?
I don't think it's a desire for constant newness. I think it's a desire for cheap prices. And that's the reality. And that's what we realized is at the end of the day, the number one thing people care about is price. People want to buy things for the lowest possible price. And that's why we shifted and adjusted a lot of our marketing to focus on price, because it was so funny. We were talking to one of our mentors and she ran a very successful secondhand e-commerce site. She said they tried so many marketing slogans. They went to Africa. They showed all of the devastation that fast fashion was causing. They spent so much time and money trying to make people understand how devastating fast fashion is for the planet. She said it had almost zero ROI for them. And the moment she slapped a 60% off this Louis Vuitton bag, boom, sales were popping and it was so effective. And she said, listen, I care deeply about sustainability. I know you guys care deeply about sustainability. If you really care, the best thing you can do is focus on the thing other people care about, and that will make more people use your product.
And by the way, we do have some consumers who only use us to shop firsthand. And we know that. But our goal for those consumers is showing them the resale value of an item. So we're pushing them away from buying a fast fashion item. So you could think about, I'm looking at, a Suzanne sweater, it's a sustainable brand versus a Zara sweater. And it's that question of, do I want to invest, $90 more in the Suzanne sweater? Well, the Phia price graph is going to show me actually that differential for that Suzanne sweater is a lot smaller on the secondhand market because it's actually holding its value. Now, why is it holding its value? It's better material. It has a better brand name. This item is going to stay and it's going to have better quality over time versus for that Zara one, you can see the difference in the price graphs of the secondhand price is way down here. That item's not retaining value. And so for our hope for those people who are just, never going to buy secondhand is that we can push them to buy more expensive purchases, or not even actually more expensive. I take that back, but purchases that they know are going to retain their value.
It sounds like, and I guess that this makes sense from a macro level, but your core demographic is what? It's Gen Z millennial?
Yeah.
Yeah. That demographic, it's really the first demographic that's thinking longer term about their fashion decisions, right? And they like the idea of what the resale value is for our parents' generation, they would probably look at you like, what do you mean resale? Like, I'm not going to do that.
We know that 85% of consumers are looking at the resale value before they decide to purchase an item to see if it's actually worth the splurge. And, our average order value is like $250. Like the majority when we talk to users, it's like the girl who's picking out her spring dress or her really nice piece that she's going to buy. And she's thinking about, hey, what's the resale value of this item? Because if I'm going to invest in a really nice, Reformation or Dewy on dress for spring, like it needs to hold its value and be something I can wear next season. Now, interestingly, a mistake that we made is when one of our early product versions, we would just show you the resale price of the item because we thought, oh, well, they're care about resale value because they're going to resell it. No, that's actually not true. Very few consumers actually resell items, but consumers do use it as a point of information when making a purchase.
Wow. Yeah. I think it's more of a emotional crutch almost of like, if I want to resell it, I know that the value is there. It's like a nice to have. I got married January of 2024, a while ago, but I got my wedding dress from Monique Lhuillier, which was beautiful, stunning, but above my budget. And how I rationalize it to myself was there are these booming secondhand marketplaces specifically for wedding dresses. And I thought to myself, okay, after the wedding, I can resell it. And because it was a brand name, like Monique is one of the top wedding dress brands, I actually sold it for 80% of the value of the dress. Now my husband's looking at me. He's like, why can't we do that for everything you got for the wedding? And I'm like, no. This is the only category that it applies.
Are not selling for the same amount. I'm so sorry. Those bouquets, we actually can't resell.
Wait, that's amazing. So what was the difference in the price?
20%?
It was,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And granted, I think there's always a little bit of supply demand dynamics of there was this girl who had moved up her wedding. She was flying to Italy like next week or the following week. So she was desperate to get her hands on a dress. And she came over to my apartment at the time. And I was like, all right, try it on. And it fit her like a glove. And I was like, perfect. Sent her on her way and made a good return on that investment, kind of. I mean, I got a lot of money back, so it worked.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because usually dresses don't hold their value as well. There's certain dress brands like that do really well. But like shoes, purses, like jewelry holds its value really, really well. And I think one thing that we've really learned is you really need like a capsule wardrobe. Like you need one awesome blazer. And if you can get that and have it be, a piece that you're going to wear for a really long time that's going to retain its value, that's awesome. And same for jewelry. Like, a really nice gold ring, you're going to have that forever. You're going to pass that down to your kid versus buying, just a bunch of stuff that's going to be frankly thrown away.
We've talked a little bit, and you mentioned one of your mentors who worked in Secondhand for a retail marketplace, but you also have a Rolodex of very well-known investors. Just to name a few, there's Spanx founder Sarah Blakely, Kris Jenner, Joanne Bradford, the former president of the browser extension tool Honey. So how did those early conversations go? Maybe for like the first, what you would consider to be that first big investor. How did those conversations go?
I mean, for us, it was really about finding people who resonated with the pain point and who also understood that it was a huge opportunity in the sense that, I mean, the secondhand market has just been growing 10x year over year, and that more consumers are becoming far more price conscious, I think, especially when you look at what's happening with tariffs. And so really understanding, especially, it's no accident that most of our investors were women who love to shop, women who love to shop specifically secondhand. And so they were able to give us both a lot of strategic advice. And that's why they were really good advisors and investors, because in addition to the capital infusion, they also were able to provide a lot of perspective of actually understanding the pain point that we were solving, but also recommendations for who should we be talking to partner with, who should we be talking to for a whole host of things when it came to our business. And so for us, it was just important to find people who understood the pain point, the business opportunity, and who genuinely wanted to come to the table and bring those strategic insights.
You guys have a wildly successful and very fun to listen to podcast called The Burnouts, and it's part of Alex Cooper's Unwell network. Have you found any interesting synergies as you've grown and scaled the podcast that have directly impacted the growth of Phia?
100%. It's just all been a learning about marketing and what actually converts. Huge learning just generally has been how short people's attention span is. Looking at the retention graphs of the clips and stuff that we put out on social media, most people are dropping off within 3 to 5 seconds of watching something. And so that really was a huge learning that has caused us to significantly refine our marketing. And also, I'd say a huge learning has just been, ultimately, we live in the attention economy. And someone who already has a platform, who is really well known, is far more likely, if someone sees their face, they're going to stop and they're going to keep watching. And so translate that to Phia. For example, if I'm using an example for our product, I want people to understand how Phia works. I'm going to use aloe leggings. I'm going to use Reformation dresses. I'm going to use a product someone actually wants to buy. And I'm going to say that in the first 2 seconds of a video, because immediately someone's going to pay attention. If you told me I could find a Reformation dress for $80, I'm going to stop and I'm going to keep listening because I want that Reformation dress for cheaper secondhand. And so all of these learnings really on the marketing side of building the Burnouts has been super critical in helping us better iterate and understand how we want to do our marketing for Phia. And so it's been like I was saying before, we knew nothing. We've never done a podcast before. This is our first time starting a company. And so everything we're learning, we're just trying to put together to build the best product, the best podcast possible.
And speaking of everything that you're doing on the podcast too, you both are building in public. Why did you decide to be so transparent about your journey as you were building Phia, including the stumbles and the things that, didn't work out? What led you to that decision?
Brand is so, so important. People are so sick of buying from big companies. And we knew big companies can smoke us on their marketing budget. But it's really about, people being bought into the journey and the vision. And that can only happen if we're posting photos of us, late at night crashing out, or, funny photos of me and Sophia, getting into it. Like it's really about people coming along for the journey, because we are a startup. There's going to be bugs. There's going to be things we're learning. We're going to push new features that we're going to roll back, and we're going to try different things. And so the idea of like getting the audience to be bought in, I think the brand is really all that matters today, because frankly, like, people don't want to buy from companies. They want to buy from you.
I think the rise of TikTok was really at least from a social media front, the turning point where people were posting like, I just remember when Instagram was in its heyday, like maybe like 2018, maybe a little bit earlier. And people would do this pose, or everything was fully posed, but it was like duck lips. It was like hand on the hip, like just you could tell the whole thing was completely set up and there was no authenticity. And then when TikTok rolled around, it was, no, we actually want the opposite of that. We want to see you crying in your car after a breakup, and we want to hear the nitty gritty and see it. And I think, like anything on social media, it trickles to how we perceive so many other elements of our lives, including building a company. So just a shout out to give you your flowers on this. I think you guys do an excellent job in this whole building in public and showing your customers and even people who haven't used Phia yet that what you're doing is raw and authentic, because it makes people want to participate and be part of the journey.
Don't worry, Sammi. We'll document some more crash ups just for you, and we'll put some nice opera music over it next time. We'll make sure to do that.
Perfect.
When we're unpolished and just able to be extremely transparent, it's also a picture of where we're at in this stage of the company, which is just the beginning.
Yep.
And so by being extremely unfiltered and unpolished, we're able to acknowledge there are still bugs in the product. The product still needs to get better, and we're actively working on that. Like, this is a startup. This is not a beautiful company that is nearing its exit potential. This is two girls who just graduated from college and who are starting this with an incredible group of other young people. And so we want our audience to understand they are going to see us hopefully through a journey. And so this is the beginning. We're going to be fucking up all the time. And hopefully as they continue to grow with us, we'll have a product that's better for it. We'll have learnings that are better for it. And by showing the beginning stages, hopefully we want to inspire other people to understand that it's not going to be great in the beginning. Your product might have a bunch of issues, and that's okay as long as you're transparent with people, and that leaves you room to actually improve.
I love the vision. Is the vision to also, because you mentioned women, girls in sharing the long-term vision, that would also be men too, right?
Totally. It's really that our target consumer right now, if you think about like male shoppers versus female shoppers, even if they're spending anecdotally the same amount of money annually, which typically in this age range they aren't, but the person who's browsing for over an hour a day on shopping sites is a woman, typically, like just statistically. So that's really our power user today. That said, we launched a men's version of our app. If you take our style quiz, the entire app will change to male taste, men's style, what's trending, brands. And so that is going to be a huge focus for us. But right now we're discussing, because we're just nailed down on this target consumer of, okay, she's a power shopper. She shops all the time. What tools do we need to give her that enable her, to make better shopping decisions, to always get the best deal, to, buy items that actually hold their value? And then, okay, that'll translate through the entire market such that we're giving every single consumer that, even if you don't shop that often. But it's interesting because this kind of target and power consumer has the hacks, and we just need to learn the hacks and then automate them for her with tech.
You also can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
It's so funny because we went through a little rebrand on our Instagram last week where when we first launched Phia, we used as an example this white sneaker because we thought it was
We thought it was
plain.
cute.
I mean, we both have this.
We caused a lot of controversy with that sneaker. People did not like that sneaker. They're like, go back to Stanford, delete that sneaker.
No, but it was mostly that our desire was, how do we pick something extremely plain and neutral, aka a white sneaker that everyone will look at and just have no opinion. But we realized we would rather people have a super strong opinion about our product than have no opinion at all. Because if you're nothing to no one, then you don't have a customer. And so we realized, we looked at the downloads. I mean, over 88% of the people who are using Phia are women. And so we redid our social media graphics. We picked this gorgeous stod bag that me and Phoebe were both like, we would buy that bag. It's super cute. I think if my boyfriend looked at that bag, he would absolutely not want to use our product. But also, I don't think that he is our target consumer anyway. So it doesn't matter. So we had to really nail in on who is the person using our product. She's a fashionable girl. And so if we want to appeal to her, we need to use items that she's actually shopping for, not this white generic sneaker that maybe is going to also appeal to a tech bro who honestly is not using our product at all, at least right now. And so for us, it's really about being focused, understanding who she is, appealing directly to her, and not trying to be generic and bland. If you're generic and bland, then you really stand for nothing.
People ask me all the time, like, oh, what advice does your dad give on the product? I'm like, he is not giving advice on the in-app feed, okay? He is not advising on the in-app editorial collections. I'll tell you that much. He's great on helping with the hiring the engineers, on larger kind of strategy stuff, but he does not know. He has no idea because he's not a shopper.
He doesn't have an iPhone.
No, to be honest, he probably loves the basic white sneaker though.
He doesn't. He just discovered what used clothing is. And then he was like, I can get used Bruno Cucinelli. Did you know I know what Bruno Cucinelli is? And I was like, that's incredible. I'm so glad. Did you Google what that was? He's like, yes, I Googled luxury men's brands. And that's the first one who came up.
Piana.
And he was so proud of himself. But exactly, he's not our target consumer. So I don't ask him. You know what I do is I bother my sister for all of her female friends. and I drive them nuts. I get on the phone with them and I make them roast the entire app. Like, and going through that has been really important because we used to just get over flooded with feedback and criticism. And that's good. But then we realized, wait a minute, those are all girls who shop in person. So all their issues are that they don't like secondhand shopping in the first place. Okay, wait, those aren't our target consumers. Okay, what is the criticism? Who's giving us criticism that's actually in that important group of people that does shop on mobile? Okay, invite them in and have them keep roasting us. That's really important. So I think that's been a huge iteration and learning for us.
Last 3 questions for you guys. These are questions I ask every guest. Can you share a system, and maybe one for each of you? Can you share a system that you have in place that benefits your career or business?
Oh, I know what yours is going to be.
Yeah, wait, I recently shared this on my Instagram story and I was shocked by how many people DM me and said that it was such a helpful, good idea. They had never thought of it because to me it seemed so simple. But every morning I start and I just give myself 30 minutes and I brain dump everything that I'm worried about and everything I think is important for me to do. So then I have a super long list. Then I go back through and I reorganize things in terms of a type of division. So something is a marketing problem, something is an engineering problem, something is a design problem. So I bucket it into these different categories. And then I go through and then I decide what is something I personally am responsible for worrying for and what is something someone else is responsible for worrying for. So then I'm like, okay, this is something I need to do and this is something that someone I manage needs to do. And then I need to have a list so I can check in with them on the progress of that thing. And then finally, when I have my beautiful list of all the things in different categories, I go through and I move things into my must-do list where I say, okay, these are the things that need to get done today, or I will be crying at the end of the night and everything will be a disaster. And here's stuff that is my backlog, which is my secondary priority. If I can get to today, amazing. I will feel great about myself. If I don't, it's okay. There's nothing to worry about. And then I do that. I've started doing that every single morning. It has helped me so much.
I do the exact same thing as Sophia does, and that's a big learning I've had from her. The other thing for me is I have severe ADHD, so I time box certain things. Once I have that list of tasks, then I'll go into my calendar and be like, okay, this hour is to focus on, the recruiting pipeline and how can we develop that and thinking about that. Okay, and I have to give myself a time. Otherwise, I can go on it all day and I'll miss all these other things I need to do. And I specifically time box my emails for a certain amount of time because otherwise I can get lost in my inbox on a bunch of things that don't matter. And so I think having that, and what I'll do is I'll put all my emails and I'll categorize them, but what actually needs to get responded to, what can I ignore, and then just bang those out in a certain period of time because otherwise I'm checking my phone consistently throughout the day. The reality is most emails are not the house is on fire and you need to head home and put out, get a hose and put it out. Emails typically you can respond to at the end of the day. And I used to let myself get kind of pulled in and distracted by every single email that came in. So time boxing that to a certain period of time is really, really important for me. And then I also time box at least one day a week where it's just a lock-in day. So no meetings either that morning or that afternoon. And it's just for like my work so that I can focus on, okay, deep work that actually needs to get done.
Okay, next question. This one comes from the Social Currency Corner, where I get your opinion or input on a trend that's impacting business and culture. So I think this actually applies very well to Phia. There are these terms now, such as de-influencing and under-consumption core, where creators are actively telling their audiences to not buy things, where they're making restraint kind of a flex. So how does this type of trend or behavior impact Phia's business model?
I love it. I think it's so important. Don't sell people junk they don't need. And you should buy stuff you actually need and that you're actually going to use. And that's what being a smart shopper means. It doesn't mean constantly impulse buying every Shein ad that pops up on your TikTok feed. It means intentionally deciding that you want to make a purchase and then doing your research and your diligence to make sure you're getting that purchase from the best place at the best price point. So I love this trend. I think it's so important. And we live in an age now where people are constantly fed junk and people want your money. And so that's something that's been awesome for us is Phia is free. It's a free tool. We're trying to make it easier for you to get the best price possible. And hopefully that helps you. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But our goal is just to be as helpful as possible to make you think about your purchase. That's why we ask the question, should I buy this? Sometimes the answer is no.
So let's end with a listener question.
Ooh.
So this one comes from Pernilla, who is on Instagram. Her handle is Celeb A-lister.
Ooh.
Queen.
If the two of you could raid any celebrity's closet, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Oh my God, 100% Rihanna.
Really?
Yes, she is genuinely such a style icon. She
To
always
wear yourself or just to have?
just to look at.
Yeah, that's honestly so bad.
every
She
time
has
pops
insane
out,
vintage
it's
pieces. I'm not gonna
insane.
lie.
And she's so unique and interesting and different. I mean, I love a beige outfit. I love black, blue. I don't like colors, but I love that she's able to do that. I aspire to get that far in my fashion journey.
Probably Bella Hadid. Because I feel like she has all the vintage finds too that are like so unique archival pieces that I would want. And then I'm really interested in like some of her, like her whole little vintage sunglass collection. I want that so badly in my life. And then I feel like she also has some classy workwear fits. So I think I'd go for Bella Hadid. But I'm tempted to say someone even older because I'd be fascinated. Like if you could tell me I could get like the Queen of England's like closet, like I'm kind of into that. Does she have Birkins? I'm fascinated. I must know what's in there. I bet you they're bad furs too. It'd be like a crocodile skin.
Phoebe and Sophia, thank you so much for this conversation. I will link both of your handles and the handles for Phia in the show notes. And final takeaway for the listeners. So every few weeks, Phia invites a group of customers or people to your office. And this is all on the Phia Instagram page. And sometimes they come to roast you. Other times they come to just give helpful feedback.
It's always a roast.
It's always
That's the best.
That's what's helpful.
Yeah, I just think, and I spoke to this earlier, but I think what you guys are doing with Phia, also with the Burnouts, it really is the new playbook for startups who are rolling out their socials, introducing whether it's a product or a service to the world. You guys are doing it so right. And so if you haven't shopped Phia or you just want to take a look at what they're doing, I highly encourage that. So thank you both for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Sammi. We admire you too. You're also building your own media empire, so we're learning from the best.
Thank you.
For context, we met Sammi before she left Amazon. So I'm really excited like that you've taken the leap, that you're doing this. The announcement was amazing. And I can't wait to see you just keep going up and up and up.
Thanks, Phoebe. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Social Currency. I've been wanting to launch this show for so long. I can't tell you how excited I am to do this and how thrilled I am that you're actually here listening. It means the world to me. If you liked what you heard today, please rate and review the podcast because it massively helps to support the work I do to bring the show to life. And if you want to keep up with the hottest business lore in real time, follow me on Instagram at Sammi Cohen Talks and subscribe to my newsletter, Social Currency, which is linked in the show notes. Social Currency is a production of Social Currency Media and Money News Network. The podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Sammi Cohen. Social Currency is produced by the Money News Network team. See you next time.